Hi everybody, this is Laura, City Scrapper. Thank you so much for joining me on my channel. Today I have a layout that I made using the January My Creative Scrapbook Limited Edition kit. For this layout, I use one of the exclusive cut files. These are cut files that are available each month to all My Creative Scrapbook subscribers. I'm using a homemade stencil from my stash, and my idea was to have lines kind of radiating out from behind the photo. This stencil could have been a little bit bigger for that effect, but I ended up making it work with the smaller stencil. So I'm using some Liquitex modeling paste, and I'm using a metal palette knife, and I'm spreading the modeling paste through the stencil. I wanted the lines in the stencil to extend further out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to first put kind of a first image of the stencil on the background, and then I move the stencil over a little bit to continue the lines, or to lengthen the lines, I guess I should say, making them look a little bit longer than they are. I also wanted to have some lines that were facing a little bit downward, and so I did the same thing. I started with a few short lines, and then I moved the stencil to make the lines a little bit longer. Then I continued to lengthen the lines until I had a nice burst of lines, and it'll look like it's coming from behind the photo. I didn't include all of the footage of me doing the stencil work because it took me quite a while to get all the lines the way I wanted them, but I just continued that same process of extending the lines in the areas where I wanted them to be a little bit longer. And I was either very careful to not allow the stencil to disrupt areas where the modeling paste was wet, or I allowed the modeling paste to dry a little bit before continuing. The lines of modeling paste are not too thick, so the modeling paste did dry pretty quickly. Once I had the background the way I wanted it, I put it aside and I allowed it to dry thoroughly. In the meantime, I'm working on inking the edges of some of the elements I'm going to use on my layout. I'm using some distress ink in Vintage Photo and a dauber. This strip of paper was left over from another page that I made this month, and then I picked out a number of butterflies from the kit, and I'm inking the edges of those as well. The butterfly that I'm holding right now was fussy cut from some of the 49 and Market packaging we got in the kit. And then I am also going to use some scalloped borders that I punched out using an EK Success scalloped border punch. The cut file originally said today documented, but I made the cut file a little bit too big, and so I decided to cut off the word documented and just use the word today. I backed the cut file with one of the pattern papers that was in the kit, and then I used some dark blue embroidery thread and I stitched all around the inside of the letters. And then I was thinking that it would be nice to have some of that same dark blue on the top part of the layout, so I thought that I could punch some holes along some of the modeling paste lines that I had made, and then I did a back stitch and I stitched just a few lines here and there using that dark blue color. And I think that that helped to kind of balance out the layout. That way there wasn't just that dark blue on the very bottom of the layout, and I think it gave a little bit of definition to those lines that I have at the top. I was never very good at things like crocheting or knitting. My mom and my sister were much better at those things, but I do really like stitching, and I love stitching on paper. There's just something about the texture that it adds that I really love. So I always look for opportunities to do a little bit of stitching on my pages, especially when there are cut files. I love to stitch on cut files. So I've completed the stitching at the top of the page, and you could see the general composition of the layout. I wanted to mount the photo on a darker piece of paper. I already have it mounted on some white cardstock, and then behind that I want to put this brown color, this same Vintage Photo color that I used to ink the edges of some of the elements. So I took a piece of the pattern paper and I inked just the edges because that's the only part that's going to show. And I think that this helps to make the photo look a little bit more prominent, having this dark piece of paper behind it. I was really happy with the way that that dark brown looked, so I put my photo back and everything else back in place on the layout, and then I attached my photo down to that mat. The photo that I'm using on this layout, like most of my layouts, is of my two daughters, Danielle and Julia. This was a photo taken in 2017 when we were at the Hard Rock Cafe in Manhattan. And I really miss those days when my kids didn't have other obligations, school, work. We could just do whatever we wanted when we decided to do something. They are really great kids. They're still happy to do things as a family, but it's just everybody is busy. And now I'm not so busy anymore. And I wish we had more time that we were all available to have these little trips. So I am attaching that piece of paper that I had inked earlier down below the photo, but there's going to be a little bit of overlap with the photo, and I'm attaching those strips that I punched out along the bottom, and I think that that'll add a nice little detail to the strip of paper. I punched the scallop border out of a shorter paper that was in the kit, so I had to piece it together, but it was very easy to piece together a scalloped border. I feel like it hides any seams that you might have. In order to balance out the strip, I also wanted to have a little bit of that same paper going along the top of the strip. I just use a thin piece and I attach it down only in the places where it's going to be visible. The photo is going to overlap the middle part. And it took me a little bit of time to get just the right amount of that strip showing on both sides of the photo. Now I'm attaching the strip down finally to the page using some ATG adhesive. I'm just making sure to make it straight. And then next I'm going to attach down the cut file. Now the cut file has a little bit of dimension because of the stitching in the back of it. It kind of makes it pop off the page just a little bit. So I attached it down with some ATG adhesive and I tried to center it underneath the photo. I wanted to have some leaves and some flowers on either side of the word today. So I'm using some tan or beige colored leaves and some of these beautiful roses that were in the kit. I absolutely love them. They are so pretty in person. There's just something about the way the center is like a bright blue and then the leaves surrounding it are soft grayish blue. They're very pretty. So I had a larger one and a smaller one for both sides. And so now I'm layering the flowers, and then I also had some smaller blue leaves, and I thought that those would also look nice tucked around those flowers on each of the clusters. I'm not done with the clusters on each side of the cut file, but I was thinking that I wanted to raise that butterfly up a little bit so a little bit more of it was visible, so I pulled that up, and then I added a sentiment that says, "Live your dream," to the front of the butterfly. I used one of the sentiments from the ephemera pack and then I mounted it on that same brownish paper that I used to make the scallop at the bottom of the layout. There were a whole bunch of butterflies that I wanted to use to place along the lines that I have made on the background with the modeling paste, and they're all different sizes and they're all the different colors that are in this collection. In general, I try to put the larger ones closer to the photo and then the smaller ones further away from the photo, although there are some exceptions to that, but that was what I was thinking as I was placing them down on the layout. I really enjoy using butterflies as an embellishment on my pages, and usually I run out of butterflies because I use so many of them, but I have to say in this kit I did not run out of butterflies. There were so many butterflies and I think I ended up using every one of them, but I never felt like there weren't enough. There were a lot of them. Now, then I went back down to the clusters and continued to arrange them. I'm using a lot of little blue leaves that were laser cuts, I believe, and I'm cutting those larger clusters of leaves into smaller bits so that I could place them in different areas around those clusters. And then I started moving the butterflies around a little bit. I wanted to make sure I had a good balance. I wanted to have a balance of sizes and a balance of color, and so I just kept switching them around till I liked the way they looked. I decided to break up the cut file today with a flower in the center of the O, and right now I'm adding a butterfly between the D and the A, and I like adding little details to the cut files. I also like the idea of bringing the butterflies down to the bottom half of the layout. I don't want the top part of the layout and the bottom part of the layout not to have anything in common. So once again, I am working on those clusters, and I think I finally have them the way that I want them. Now I'm adding some photo corners to my photo. I love using my EK Success scalloped photo corner punch and punching out some photo corners. I like the way it brings color close to the photo, and I'm using that same pattern paper that I used to back the cut file for that. Now I'm ready to attach down the butterflies, but first I want to pop them up on some foam. So for all the butterflies, I took little pieces of foam. I put one on each of the wings, and then I added some ATG adhesive to attach them down to the layout. And I wanted the wings to pop up a little bit, so I put some adhesive down the center of each butterfly and pressed down on the center, and that makes the wings a little bit higher than the middle of the butterfly. Then once again, because I had the butterflies popped up on the top of the layout, I thought I wanted to pop up some things on the bottom of the layout. So I decided to pop up some of the flowers. On the left-hand side, I have the larger of those two flowers popped up on some foam. I also popped up the flower that is in the letter O, and I popped up the smaller flower on the right. And then, of course, I popped up the butterfly between the D and the A also. I really like having a little bit of dimension on my pages. I know that's not everybody's thing, but of course you could make this exact same layout without using the foam. I wanted to add some jewels to the lines at the top of the layout, so I'm using some gold self-adhesive jewels. I got these on clearance in Michael's. I just happened to come across them in the jewelry section and they were clearing them out, so I bought a number of them, and they are different sizes, which I love. So I have some medium size and some very tiny jewels, and I put them not only at the top on the lines, but I also put a couple in those flower clusters at the bottom. And then I use some short strips of 3mm pearls, and I place them on just a couple of the butterflies on the layout just to add another texture to the page. And that is the very last touch, and here are some close-ups of the layout. Thank you so much for watching this video, everybody. I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to view this video. Please take a look in the description box if you are interested in checking out all of the beautiful kits that My Creative Scrapbook has to offer every month. They have 4 beautiful kits. This is the limited edition kit. They have lots of other different types of kits for all different types of scrapbookers. I hope that you have a fantastic day, and I will be back again soon with another video. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.